Okay, well, we're preparing for Oregon State now, and they're a very good football team. They beat Wisconsin, and the score wasn't indicative to me of how well they played. They very physical team. They run the ball well, and they play excellent on defense. They're very well coached. They tackle well, and it'll be a stiff test for us, but I think we're excited for it. A little bit different type of game than we had on Saturday night. Houston, you know, winged it around quite a bit. Oregon State is a little more balanced, a little more power run game. You'll see some West Coast offense principles in the way they play offense, but what really stands out is the way their defense played against Wisconsin. They dominated up front and they tackled well on the back end. So it'll be a great game for us, and I think the kind of game that we need at this point in the season.
What's your level of excitement about your team right now, being undefeated and everything?
Well, we're happy to be 3-0. We're not satisfied with the way we're playing yet. We're constantly trying to find ways to get better. As coaches, our players are doing the same thing. But I'm excited about the prospects. I'm excited because of the way our student athletes are approaching the task every day. And that's with great focus and great energy, and they're serious about it, and they're trying to get better. And so as a coach, that's what you like to see.
The difficulties of them, they've only played one game, you really only have one game to work off of. Do you get enough off that one game film, or is...
Well, fortunately, they haven't had a whole lot of changes in their coaching staff. So there's a lot of similarities in what they did last year, so you have to go back to last year's tape. Certainly one thing we look at is their game, the way they played Arizona State on defense last year, and some of the concepts and schemes that they used. But their defense is, I mean, I don't know if I want to see more than one game, the way they played against Wisconsin. I mean, they really looked good. I mean, really good. And they look good on offense, too. You know, they're, like I said in the opening statement, they're a lot different, really, than any of the three teams that we faced. They're a little bit more conventional in their offensive approach. You'll see more multiple tight end sets. You know, so from that perspective, it'd be good to have more film to go back and look at it and see if it was just an aberration versus Wisconsin, or if it's something that they're really focusing on this year. But it's going to be a heck of a challenge. I mean, they're a really, really good football team.
Coach, if they're more conventional, does that mean sometimes they can be more predictable?
Yeah, I don't know if I would say that. You know, Mike Riley's very experienced, and he's their play caller now. And you know, he understands how to dress things up. I mean, they're going to have some concepts that they like, some concepts that they stick to no matter what, but they're going to make them look different pre-snap. And so the challenge for us is to try to see through the window dressing, you know, and recognize the final formation when the ball snapped and put ourselves in the right place to make a play.
You ever coached against him?
I've coached against him a number of times. Well, when he was at New Orleans, when he was at San Diego, I don't know, those are probably the two places I played against him.
Back to their schedule, do you think it's an advantage for them having almost 2 weeks to prepare for you, or do you think it's an advantage for you because you've had 3 weeks of games to get settled in?
I don't know. I don't know. Honestly, I've thought about it, and I don't give it a lot of thought because it's not going to, you know, there's nothing I can do about it, but I don't know. You know, it probably works in the favor of both. You know, they'll be well prepared. They'll have a lot of film on us. You know, our guys will have played a little bit more in games. So I still think it just comes down to who executes, who plays harder, you know, who makes tackles, who tries to stay away from, you know, costly penalties, things like that.
Did you see anything in watching the tape of the game? Was there anything that you had a different impression of after watching it from the sideline? Was there anything that stood out, better or worse?
It's always a little different, but this game, no. You know, I didn't have a great feel, as you guys know, coming off the field about the way we performed, particularly on offense. And I think it's because our expectations are so high after 2 weeks. And I think it's important that I keep in mind, and everybody else keeps in mind, that we're playing with a redshirt freshman quarterback and 2 young tackles, a young center, you know, young slot, and realize that 567 yards is pretty darn good. But at the same time, I like the fact that we're not satisfied with it, because regardless of the win and regardless of the yardage and regardless of the points, there were just a lot of things that we know we can do better. And I got that sense from our players yesterday, is that they were, they enjoyed the win, but there was a feeling in the media room yesterday of, God, we left a lot out there. We can be so much better. So that's what we're striving for.
It seemed like Houston tended to stack the box a little with a lot of guys. Do you think you might see that a lot with Brett, challenge him to beat a team over the top and vertically?
I'd be surprised if we don't. Yeah, I absolutely would be. Houston brought pressure, and when I say pressure, I mean they brought an extra either linebacker or defensive back about 50% of the time. And they had some negative plays on us, but we still ran. We ran for 290 yards running the football. So I think you have to pick your poison when you do that. I think it can be risky as a defensive coach to bring pressure a lot, because all it takes is one guy to miss an assignment or miss a tackle, be in the wrong gap, and you're out the gate on the run. Or you better make sure you have darn good corners, because if they can't hold up, you get a long one on them. Oregon State's got good corners and they've got a good front, so it's going to be tough sledding in there.
Jim, Torian White had kind of a rough stretch there in the fourth quarter. What did you say to him to get him to do that?
When I went up to Torian on the sideline late in the fourth quarter, he just said to me, he said, "Hey, Coach, that'll never happen again." And he said it with real conviction, and he's very sincere. And he was in here yesterday, he was in there this morning watching film. I think he'll bounce back. I just told him, I said, "Hey, look, you're a young guy, you're going to have games like that. Let's make sure we learn from it, and let's get better going forward." And I have a great feeling that Torian will respond.
What kind of game, watching the tape, did Dalton Hilliard have?
Dalton played well. Dalton played especially well on special teams. And I thought he covered well. We asked Dalton to do a lot of different things. You'll see him at safety. You'll see him, working in the slot. You guys have seen him, we play him at that weak inside linebacker sometimes. And then, he's one of our core special teams players. The only thing we really haven't done with him yet is put him on offense. And maybe we will, because he's a guy that can do some things offensively. So, for the things that we're asking him to do, he was very productive. He had a really good block on Stephen Manfro's 27-yard punt return that set up the field goal. And Dalton, he's a leader. He comes to practice every day, meetings every day with the mindset he's going to get better. I think his teammates respect him, and it's fun to have him on our team because he is so versatile.
Larry Scott this weekend talked about he's thinking about making the teams in the conference do an injury report. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, you had to do it in the NFL. Do you think it would work in the college level?
I think whatever they ask us to do, we'll do. I think teams will conform to that. I think if it's across the board and everyone's held to the same standard, then I don't have any problem with it at all. It works in the NFL. Some people manipulate it a little bit.
That's what I was going to ask. Do you think it's accurate when it's given out?
At times, with certain teams. I think there's some coaches that understand how to manipulate it a little bit, and they try to. I think that it's interesting. It's become kind of this, hot topic, injuries. And like I said last week, we can all understand why people want to know about injuries. First of all, there's a huge level of interest in our teams, and the fans want to know. In the NFL, I know they worry about the bettors. I don't know how college football works, but in the pros, they're worried about, the bettors. Some bettors have more information than others, so they try to streamline the information. And I think that's fine, but from a coach's perspective, anytime that you lose a competitive advantage, it's hard. But if the commissioner deems that that's the way we should go, then I'm 100% behind it, and we'll conform 100%.
Did you, when you found out you didn't have to do that when you came to college, did you kind of...
I didn't even know until a few weeks ago. That's why I was feeding you guys all that injury info early on. You should have told me. Chris told me. No.
But did you like that idea?
It doesn't matter to me, really. Like I said, anytime, a coach doesn't have to divulge information that his opponents can find useful in game planning against him, then we're going to try not to do that. But like I said, if it's what we have to do, then we do it, and it's we just deal with it. We won't try to manipulate it if there's a rule put into effect. That's not our style, and we'll be compliant.
Do you have an injury update for us?
Yes, I do. Everyone's doing great. No.
Or fine.
Yeah,
Now,
fine.
great, that's a new level. We've gone from good to fine to great. It's a grade above.
Yeah. Ishmael is out, as we talked about on Saturday night. They're going to do the surgery on Friday. He's had this problem for a couple of years, and we just feel like the best thing to do is, he could play with a harness, but that's not the right way to do this, to go about getting this fixed. So we're going to get it fixed. It's about a 6 to 9 month recovery. So it's, we'll see if he's ready for spring. He probably won't be, but he'll be back for fall. The great thing is that because of NCAA rules, he can get this year back. He can get a medical hardship. So we expect that to happen. Jeff Bach is feeling a lot better, but we'll see where he is later in the week. I don't think anyone else got dinged at all. Brett's feeling good. I think he came through the game well. I didn't see him hobbling around at all once the game started. We're pretty healthy, quite frankly. It's a good thing 3 games into the season to not have a long injury report. I guess it's dealing with youngsters. They heal a lot faster than those old guys, or us old guys.
With Ishmael going down, you have had to burn a couple red shirts with Marcus and Fabian. What are you sort of expecting out of those guys now? Because I assume that they're coming into the season sort of expecting a red shirt, and now they're out here.
No, Fabian from the get-go,
Or not?
well, not from the get-go, but from before the start of the season, really a couple weeks before the season started, we decided that Fabian was a guy that we wanted to play. So he was playing right from the get-go.
Yeah, Marcus.
I guess you could use the term burn a red shirt. I just think that it's the next man up mentality, and these guys were brought here to, do a couple things. Number one, get a great education. Number two, help us win football games. And so when it's their turn to step up, they step up. Marcus got about 10 plays on defense, and he played on special teams. And I think that he'll be a guy that contributes a lot as we go through the year. And I think it's just good for those guys to be able to go out and contribute and play and get better. And long term, I think it's good for them.
Is there kind of a feeling too, the fact that you're going to lose 2 cornerbacks next year, you'd like to get these guys on the field and give them a little feel for playing?
Yeah, I think that's serious. That's a real positive for us, because we're losing 2 really good corners. And so the more action we can get Marcus, and Fabian's new to the position, but he's sure catching on fast. Unfortunately, Ishmael won't get any more work there. But I think it's a good thing for us. We moved Randall and go for it into safety. He could go back to corner if we wanted him to, but we like him at safety. So yeah, we need to get those guys some experience.
Last week you talked a lot about needing to back up that with Nebraska. As you continue to have success, do you find it's harder to keep the guys level-headed, to keep them focused on one game at a time?
Maybe last week, that was a concern. I don't think this week it is, because we're going into conference play against Oregon State, who had, all they have to do is turn on the film and look at about 3 or 4 plays, and, everyone will realize what kind of team we're going up against. And the fact that it's a Pac-12 game is huge. So, we're coming off of a big win against Nebraska. I think, everyone kind of worries about a letdown. This week, I don't see that as being a problem at all.
Did you get an update on Castro and Woods?
No.
Nothing yet?
Not yet. Hopefully soon. Hopefully soon. For their sake, as much as anybody's. What are you guys fighting over? Who's going to ask a question?
Yeah, no. He took my pencil.
Oh, there's a couple of kids over there.
Teacher's going to have to settle it down.
You don't want to see the note read too much. You were talking about Torian before. Is there kind of a line you got to walk on that a little bit, that these are mistakes that this guy's never played before? When does that expectation that he should know better kick in more?
That's a tough one. I mean, I think that's what you said is very accurate, and that's delicate balance, and it's a hard balance to find when you're a coach, is that how much do you excuse because of inexperience. You know, our tendency is to excuse very little and hold him to a high standard, but at the same time have some understanding that this is a young man who's still developing as a football player. Heck, he's still developing his personality, and we just have to help him along as best as we can. What I liked about Torian was the way he reacted. You know, he didn't sulk. He wasn't in the tank. He didn't run and hide. He was just very determined. And I think you'll see a very determined football player on Saturday at 12:30 when we kick it off versus Oregon State. I think both he and Simon will, neither of them have what you'd call a great game, but they're great opportunities to learn and get better. And I think both of those guys, they were the first two kids in the building today to watch film, Torian and Simon. So I think that's a good sign for us.
Anything else? We're good.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.